What do you do if you're just getting on with your life when suddenly you hear something or see something, or you're treated in a certain way by someone, and it shoots into your memory a traumatic event from the past? You've been triggered. What do you do? Let's talk about it. I'm John Spinks. As many of you know, I was born into a religious cult. I was trapped, but was very fortunate to escape at the age of 22. In this video, for the sake of this awareness campaign, I'm going to tell you about some of the cult triggers I still feel from time to time, 32 years after leaving the cult. You might relate to some of them. If you have been in a cultic or abusive situation yourself, you might still experience being triggered. How do you handle it? What's your advice? Please write in the comments below and someone might be helped. What triggers us is often a subject that gets pushed under the carpet or buried in the sand, because they can seem so trivial and can make us feel ashamed. Don't be ashamed, it's not your fault. One of the best ways to deal with them is to talk about them with people you trust. That's why I'm telling you now. Thank you for listening. I trust you to keep the secrets I'm about to tell you. First of all, let's just look a bit deeper into what triggers actually are. Triggers are anything that might cause a person to recall a traumatic experience they've had. A trigger is a reminder, conscious or unconscious, of a traumatic event. Triggers evoke your powerlessness at the moment of trauma, and they whisper to you that you are still powerless now. They are all lies. Of course, some things that trigger us can actually serve us. They can warn us of danger, of what befell us in the past. So some can be useful. Others can start off as opening old wounds every time we are triggered, but in time, as those wounds are healed, the triggers, like echoes, can serve as reminders that we have moved on from that abuse or trauma, and we are not going to let it happen again. So here's a recent experience that I recognised when I'd been triggered. It happened to me in March 2020 when lockdown was announced for the first time. I felt very down that week, and I don't know why until I realised that I felt like I was shut up, which is what the exclusive brethren used to do to control people who they deemed were unclean. Unclean according to the homemade, ever-changing laws of their leader. It was a suspension that had you banned from their daily meetings till the priests were satisfied you had repented, according to their cult perverted minds. Those old feelings of being restricted and restrained in the cult came over me in that first week back in March. To some, me being triggered by that could seem to be very trivial, but to me, it put me on a rare downer. Those echoes from my past came back to haunt me. My biggest trigger I recognise since I escaped the cult 32 years ago, which I think serves me to a large extent nowadays, is control. For 22 years, I experienced where I lived being controlled. Where I lived was controlled. The drains on my house were controlled. Where I couldn't go was controlled, i.e. football matches, cinema, restaurants, theatres, concerts, fun fairs, etc. Having to attend 11 meetings a week was controlled. Who I couldn't marry was controlled. Who I was forbidden to eat with was controlled. All technology, computers, mobile phones, all banned, therefore controlled. The hair on my face was controlled. Forbidden any contact with family who had left was controlled. You get the picture? So since then, if anyone tries to control me, if it happens, I immediately feel a resistance rising up in me. And instead of just giving in through fear, a calm comes over me. And nowadays I recognise I have a choice to allow them to control me, or to keep my trousers on and walk away. And invariably, my hypothetical trousers stay on and I don't receive the control. In the first, say 10 years after leaving the cult, when I was triggered by someone or something trying to control me, I'd get angry. But over the years I've mellowed because I know it's not going to happen. So I guess I have come to understand and value myself higher than allowing anyone or anything to control me. How do you get on with being controlled? Does that trigger you? Another thing that triggers me is what I perceive as false or usurped authority. If I get a whiff of false authority, unnecessary red tape, people in positions throwing their weight around, thinking they are above people, telling them what to do, etc., I'm triggered and I will resist. I recognise it being rooted in the Mickey Mouse authority over my life in the cult that coercively controlled me, and looking back, I felt my soul was being overpowered by these religious people who thought it was their duty and they had the authority to groom me into having the identity they wanted for me and the values they decided for me. See, I'm feeling it again. Actually, they were just doing what their cult leader instructed them to do. They were totally under his perverted authority. And again, nowadays, though I may feel my hackles rising if I am in a usurped authority situation, my motivation is to feel pity for such ego heads whose authority is generally null and void. How do you get on with that type of authority? I would suggest that triggers are born out of abuse, things that disturbed us, frightened us, restrained us, locked us down so we couldn't spread our wings and fly and discover our identity and be free. All those things are the opposite of love. Here's a very simple question. Are you in a religious group right now that has people in it separated from family members who have left because of the laws in your group? Religious laws that do this destroy families and are the cause of many being triggered by the trauma of their destroyed family. If you are still in such a group, you might want to think about whether that's what you really want to be part of. One last example, I was at an ex-cult conference once and an elderly gentleman who was a counsellor got up to tell his story. He had been out of the cult for many years, so what triggered him still surprised me, though it shouldn't have done. He said that when he shops online, he always gets triggered when he gets to the shopping cart payment page, when he sees the button that tells him to submit. It gives him flashbacks of when he was in the cult and he had to submit to the fake authority and the CoS of control in the group. It's amazing how sometimes little things can be such big triggers. So there's a few examples of what still triggers me 32 years later. Do you still have any triggers? By talking about them to others, we are shining light on them. We're exposing them as triggers, as echoes from the past. Here's 4 tips how to take the journey to overcome triggers that may spoil your life. I'll add them in the description below too if you want to read them afterwards. Number 1, be aware and identify them and label them. Number 2, work out the trigger's origin. Where, when and who did it come from? Number 3, reprogram negative beliefs. Start with one trigger at a time, i.e. the control trigger in my case, and tell yourself, I don't allow myself to be controlled. What's actually true is I value myself. I ignore people who try to control me. They can't. So I am at peace with myself even if they ever try. Set yourself up for a win. And number 4, if you need more help, make inquiries and work with a therapist or coach who will help you. And lastly, because you've come this far in the video, congratulations, I want to tell you a positive side to being triggered. See that painting over there? Let me show you. It's a rope bridge between 2 hills in County Antrim, Northern Ireland, a country that I adore. I was there a few years ago. It's called Carricker Reed Rope Bridge, first erected by salmon fishermen in 1755. Go and visit it sometime. There's no better crack than in Ireland. Does that sound more like Welsh? Anyway, for me, it triggers in me feelings of home, beauty, where all things are possible. So remember, we can position things in our lives, like art, for example, that will trigger good thoughts, positive feelings, things that will inspire and motivate us. Don't forget those triggers either. So thank you for watching. If you found this video helpful, please like and comment to get this message out further. Maybe comment about what still triggers you and your advice, please. And please subscribe, which will help. See you soon.